So I've got a little bit of a problem. I'm stuck. Contrary to some commenters, I am not out of ideas. I have a huge list of ideas, things that I want to make, things that I need to make. But today, every single one of those ideas is blocked. And honestly, this happens pretty often. Projects will have to wait on me to save money for them, or to be the right season, or for my wife and I to decide what the thing should look like. It happens all the time, but right now it's happening with every single project. So we're gonna do something different. Now, normally my projects are things that I want to have or a problem that I need to solve. And so they're very intentional, right? Because I want the outcome. I can't do any of that stuff today. So instead, the outcome that I want is learning how to do something new. And then we're gonna kind of figure out a project around that. And since I have the opportunity to cut metal with a laser now, we're gonna start there. So what I wanna test is to see if we can cut out an intricate metal shape and then engrave that same intricate shape in a piece of wood and embed the two together. They're both using the same digital file, and so it should work just fine. But every time I say that, something goes wrong. But that's the kind of technical feat that I want to figure out. I've gotta put it in a project, and so I still have to figure that out. I actually don't have any ideas. Maybe it's like intricate corner details that are like folded. I think I got it. It's almost summertime, and we like to have people over, spend a lot of time outside and have meals. And so a big serving tray seems like a useful thing to have. And since they're not difficult to make, I can spend more time thinking about how it looks and try to make it interesting. And that's where the inlay can come in. Now, this inlay process is basically two colors. You got the wood and the metal. And so I looked for a bunch of two-color simple line art things that I could download that were like Star Wars or Lego. And none of them worked. And then I thought about QR codes. There's a bunch of different websites where you can enter in a piece of text, whether it's a URL, maybe your YouTube channel or your socials, or even your Wi-Fi password, and it will generate a QR code. And then after that, you can add logos to it, you can change the color of it, and you can actually change the different shapes that are included within the QR code itself. After you've got it all customized, you can download the QR code in a bunch of different file formats, and we're gonna use SVG because that's a vector format. We can scale it without losing quality, and we can import that into Xtools Creative Space software and Lightburn for the two different lasers. And this should work just fine. We're taking a digital file, putting it into two pieces of software, and cutting it on two different lasers. People do this with wood inlaid in wood all the time, so it should be fine. I've just never cut metal with a laser before. Cicadas and rain, and I can't do anything about either one of them. Regardless of the noise, we gotta cut some metal, and to do that, we're gonna use the Metal Fab from Xtool. You probably saw me use this thing recently on the Karmann Ghia because I had to do some welding, and it's a laser welder. I had to do some cleaning, and it's a laser cleaner, but I didn't get to try the laser cutting. Now, not only can you use the welding gun as a cutter, you can just like freehand cut with it, you can also put it in there because that is a CNC. That was easy. So this thing can cut mild steel, stainless steel, brass, aluminum, a bunch of other metals, and up to about 5 millimeters thick, which is pretty thick, but for this project, I need thin stuff. I need delicate cuts, thin pieces, and so we're gonna go with some really thin brass or aluminum. We'll just test them both out. I would say that's a success. This is amazing. It cut through that really, really cleanly. And I just ran a file over the backside of it to get rid of a little bit of slag just so it'll fit into the wood, which we need to talk about, and that's why I made this silly shape. I made this kind of silly shape because I wanted something that I could cut out in the wood so that I can test the fit of different types of things. I have an inside curve, an outside curve, a complete cutout, sharp corners, straight lines. I wanted to make sure that all of these different things would work when I tried to engrave this shape in a piece of wood. Speaking of, it's time to go to Lightburn. Lightburn is the software that I use to run my Thunder laser, and you can use it with most different lasers, but I want to make sure that I can engrave something deep enough to actually hold this thickness, and I need to know exactly what that is. So I'm gonna run a test card through Lightburn on my laser, and that engraves a bunch of different kind of depths, essentially, and we can pick the one that's right for this material, and then we'll know how deep to engrave this shape. This video is sponsored by Brooklyn Bedding, which is a company that designs, assembles, and ships their mattresses from their factory in Arizona. We got our mattress from them. It's the Sedona Elite, and it's kind of like a medium feel, but it has cooling, so it's nice and comfortable, and you don't get too hot. We love it. But that's just one of the mattresses they have. They've got lots of different types for all different types of people, different firmnesses, different sizes, and you can find all of that at their website. And you can also take the sleep quiz. This lets you tell them a little bit about you and about how you sleep, and then they help match you up with the right mattress. After that, it gets shipped to you with free shipping to your house. You unbox it yourself and you get to sleep on it for 120 nights. And in that time, if you find that you don't like it, they'll take it back and give you your money back. And honestly, that's like one of the biggest deals when you're buying a mattress. You just pay a bunch of money and then you have this giant thing, and what if you don't like it? It's a pain to return, but not with Brooklyn Bedding. If you don't like it, they will manage getting rid of it and get you your money back, or help you swap out to find the right mattress for you. But we were actually super happy with the mattress that we got, and we've been enjoying it ever since we got it. Brooklyn Bedding has been making mattresses for over 30 years. They know what they're doing, and they're put together right here in the United States, which is fantastic. They also don't have any fiberglass in them, which apparently is a common thing, but not a good thing for you, so you don't have to worry about that with Brooklyn Bedding. I love our Brooklyn Bedding mattress, and I think you will too. And if you're in need of a bed, what you do is scan the QR code, then go over to the website and use the code ILikeToMakeStuff. That's gonna give you 30% off a new mattress, which is fantastic because you also get free shipping. And then once you're there, make sure you take the sleep quiz, and it will help you figure out which mattress is good for your lifestyle. Again, use the QR code, use the code ILikeToMakeStuff, get 30% off. Huge thanks to Brooklyn Bedding for sponsoring this video. Let's get back to it. I had to do a couple of these test boards to get the right ranges, but basically I can take some calipers and then find a depth that matches the thickness of the brass that I'm gonna use, and then that number is what I need to use for my laser settings. And those settings are specific to this type of wood, which is cherry. I'm not sure if I'm gonna use cherry or not, so I'm gonna have to run this same process on basically whatever wood I end up on, which means I need to decide that. Now, walnut and brass always look really good together, but I actually don't have any walnut, so I started looking through what I have, and I found a piece of teak. Now, teak is something that I don't find very often. It's really expensive when I find it, but I've got a big piece left over from my old desk. Many, many years ago, I got hired to build a bunch of furniture out of teak, and I had a few boards left over that I turned into a desk. Very heavy. You may be the same way, but where I live, this stuff is really hard to get, so I don't see it very often, and you may have not seen it either. Let me tell you just a little bit about it because it's one of my favorite woods. It's absolutely beautiful. It's really dark and really dense, but it's also oily, which is great for outside because it stops it from being able to soak up moisture. A lot of times when you see outdoor furniture, it's made from teak or acacia, and they're kind of similar. But regardless, this is the last of my teak, so I want to use it, but I also don't want to waste it, so I've got to be really careful with my laser preparation. For many years now, I've held on to my last scraps of teak, and luckily I can use this to do my final tests on. I want to make sure that I can engrave in this depth so that this piece will sit in there. Once I've got it figured out on my scrap, then I can go use my good pieces. I think I've got my settings right for the teak, and my brass sheets came in, so we can go finally cut these pieces out on the metal fab. Now, I don't know that this could have gone any better. That looks amazing. These cuts are fantastic. If I'd had a little extra material on the outside, I could have used the fixture to actually hold these panels down, and then they wouldn't have buckled, but it still worked just fine. Now we can go do the opposite or the same in the teak. I need to glue on those side panels, and then I want to like shape them and sand them and stuff so that they look right. But before we get to any of that, I think it makes sense to go ahead and glue the brass to the wood. As far as the glue goes, I thought about using a few different things, and I'm not really sure what's best. I've got some 4-minute epoxy, they have 5-minute epoxy, and the problem with this is that it has a short working time, so you'd have to mix a little bit and put on a couple of things and mix. You'd have to do a lot of mixing. I've also got this Thixo, which would be a little bit easier because it mixes itself, but then, I don't know, I've never used this before, and I'm not sure if it would work, even though it has a 25-minute work time or something like that. But I'm also gonna try CA glue. Now CA glue is not gonna be as strong as epoxy, but it's also easy to replace. So if a piece pops off, I can just glue it back on and maybe use epoxy the second time. I'm gonna go ahead and try this because I think between gluing this down and then knocking it in with a mallet, I think it's actually gonna wedge these two materials together, and the glue will only be doing part of the work. That's cool. It's like, yeah, that pushes it down in there. Yeah, I think that's the way to go, at least for now. We can always change it later, but I've got a lot of stuff to glue in place. Now most of these pieces are actually sitting down pretty flush with the top of the wood, but there's a few of them that are kind of sticking up a little bit, and I'm not exactly sure why. And I don't think it really matters, but it did get me thinking. Once I've got all the pieces in place and the walls of the tray in place, I could pour in like a really thin layer of epoxy, and that's gonna lock everything together and nothing can move. And it'll also make it all the same surface. It'll also keep water off of the wood. It sounds like a pretty good idea, but that actually got me thinking about a different way I could have done this earlier. I engraved a pocket that fit the same size as the material, so you could drop them in place, and it has to be really exact or it's just not gonna look good or it's not gonna fit well. Another way is just to make a cut-through template. I could have had my wood surface here. I could have had a template with holes cut all the way through it that I just laid in place, and then I drop in my piece of metal in through that template, and once everything's glued in place, the template comes away and all the metal stays in the right place. But you know, I like to make things complicated. The glue is all dried, and before I do all the final sanding and the oiling, I have one more little detail that I want to add. This is a little cutout piece. It's a negative piece that I don't actually use in the design, but it's from the design, which means it has the right radius on it, and I can use this as a template to add that radius to the outside of the tray. Well, I was gonna do like a little montage of like cracking this open and pouring some oil on, but I can't open it. It's all gunked up and gross. So, I guess I'm gonna have to stab it. Now this is a project that absolutely started as a way to try a technique, to see if it would work, but the final result is something that I'm actually really proud of. And for me, personally, it's more artsy than most of the stuff I do, which I actually kind of like. And the coolest thing is if somebody's over here having a meal, and they want to get on the Wi-Fi, I can just hold up the tray and say, here you go. Anyway, thanks for hanging out with me on this one. I'll catch you next time. Thing to make. It's something we'll use, and it gives me the opportunity to focus. Generate QR codes by entering in a different URL or even URL. You probably saw me use this thing recently on the Carmen Ghia because I had to do some welsing moisture from being able to bit